Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's an agonizing August, but we do have a lot of stuff to get into on today's show that's built up over the last few days around the league. Make sure that you do subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as the podcast feed over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Trevor Lade. Joining me is Keith Smith. Keith, I complained last show. I am tired of it. I'm tired of the heat. I'm tired of no NBA basketball, and August needs to go away.
Yeah, I am also done with how hot it is. It's unreasonable here a lot of the year, but like this year it's been really rough. I mean, we're still hitting mid to high 90s most days, which is crazy. I will also say in terms of NBA news, as things go this time of year, or I guess any time of year, we finished our show on Friday. We're like, all right, fun live show for mid-August, and then a trade broke, not a major one, but that came out, I don't know what, it was like 15, 20 minutes after we shut everything down and ran off to do what we had to do that afternoon. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So a couple of these things, not super timely, but it's August. We're at least covering the stuff and going to get to it as we get to it.
That's right. All right, let's kick things off here. Let's go with Big Vooch. Nikola Vucevic expects to stay with the Chicago Bulls for now, at least. Whenever you have a veteran in his contractual situation, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment, the potential for moves is always there, but it doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to be happening anytime soon. And I love that he addressed in the comments that he made the misaggregation that we saw a few weeks back, where suddenly people were thinking that he was going to get bought out right now, which was never going to happen.
Yeah. That's anytime you get a guy like him in the final year of his contract on a pretty decent size deal, he's over 20 million. A buyout is certainly always possible, but it is rare that you're going to get it unless there's like, hey, the team already drafted a new center, or they are completely rebuilding, or whatever it may be. You're almost always going to get it. It's going to go into the season, because if you're the Bulls, you'd rather have Vooch at 21.5 million as a potential trade chip than you would have him as, all right, he's just dead money for whatever amount we agree to on the books. Yes, I am sure if he came back and said, I'll give all of it back, the conversation might go a different way. He's certainly not going to do that. So it's you keep these guys till the trade deadline. If no trade emerges, then we're in the buyout season for a couple weeks, and you have the conversation at that point of, hey, do we want to talk about a buyout and see if we can figure something out here? And then you move forward. I think everybody kind of knows this is probably Vooch's last year with the Bulls, I would imagine, and we'll see where it goes from there. But for now, I don't think he's going anywhere either.
Yeah, it looks like he'll be sticking around. Now, again, you're, as Keith said, you have to get typically past the trade deadline. That's when the buyout market really picks up, because teams don't want to trade somebody and then go, or buy out somebody and then go, oh, whoops, we could have used that contract in a deal at the deadline. So for now, Vucevic will stick with the Chicago Bulls. We'll see ultimately where this lands. I still think the Bulls have a lot of work to be done on this roster, but for the time being, Nikola Vucevic will stick here. Now, he talked a little bit about his career and how he still feels good, still mentally is sharp, wanting to continue playing, or at least has that drive to continue playing. He's going into his age 35 season here.
Sure.
What does the future look like for Vooch?
Yeah, I think he's still productive. Yeah. I don't know that anybody is suggesting he's an all-star level guy anymore, but still a very good offensive center, still a good rebounder. Defense is not so great, but I could see Vooch at playing another 3 or 4 years if he wants to, and probably the tail end of that as a backup center. We've seen, it's so weird because it feels like he's the same age, but he's considerably younger. Steven Adams kind of reinvent his career as arguably the best backup big man in the NBA. So now you're just at a point for Vooch where different type of player, but and then it's probably go somewhere. Maybe it's one of these teams that drafted a young big that's not quite ready, and Vooch can start for a year or two while that guy figures the league out. Like, for example, Phoenix could be a good fit for somebody like him. not right now because they've got other big guys, but in a couple years when they clear out some of their other big guys, and Malwatch maybe isn't ready to be the starting center 30 minutes a night guy, you could have Vooch. Or we saw Brook Lopez this year say, hey, I'm good with a backup role.
Yeah.
Like I will take a backup role, and Vooch kind of similar to Brook Lopez in that sense, as far as age and skill set and value. So I think we could see him very much go into a spot where it's still around for the next 3 years. Probably not on the money he makes now. Probably more around the mid-level exception or a chunk of the MLE. But that's fine. I think Vooch is still a productive guy that can really help a team.
All right, let's jump over, and I agree. I think that he can play a number of years, especially with his ability to space the floor. Whether or not it's all going to be with Chicago, we'll see. But
yeah,
let's jump over to that trade that happened. That of course went down moments after we stopped the recording. Haywood Highsmith traded to the Nets. Keith, on the surface, you look at this and go, "Oh, well, this is a salary dump here." I mean, the Miami Heat, they attached a second-round pick to Haywood Highsmith, sending him to the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets said, "Cool, we've got cap space. We'll take a future asset here." And the Nets sent back a nothing something, a protected second-round pick
top
that is
55.
Right,
yeah.
It's never going to actually convey.
Exactly.
Right, so
Yep.
So it's a nothing something that got sent back. But I thought it was a little curious that Miami was salary dumping Highsmith when his skill set is the type. Maybe he's not the highest level 3-and-D style player, but he does have an in-demand skill set and just a $5.6 million salary, and it's an expiring salary at that. I was surprised that he was somebody that they needed to attach an asset to in order to move on from. Now, since then, they've gone on to sign Drew Smith to fill their final open roster spot that they wanted to fill out. What do you think about this? From the Nets side, this is easy. This is cool. You got a second round pick. You took on a little bit of salary, and there you go. What did you think about Miami's decision making here?
Yeah, I think from the Heat side, I get that they needed to get under the luxury tax.
Yes.
Especially if they wanted to bring in Drew Smith. They're about 1.8 million under now. So that's enough for that. They won't fill out that last roster spot, presumably right now, because they'll let that one ride until they can do a rest of season contract with somebody. But I think it was all right when you started looking at, all right, how are they going to create the room under the luxury tax? Where are they going to go? There are not other good options to trade for them. It's either guys who are kind of core players, so like Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins, like bigger salary guys who are going to be on the roster. So then you get into the smaller salaries. Well, a guy like Kashad Johnson doesn't give you enough. That wasn't going to get you there. That's only 1.9 million. And then everybody else is on a rookie scale deal. So at that point, you're like, all right, well, we don't want to trade any of the rookie scale guys. They all still might pop. There was some talk of maybe a buyout with Samani Fontecchio at one point, but Miami seems to be like, no, hey, that's an expiring $8 million contract. We're going to keep him and see maybe we need that salary in a trade, or I think, quite frankly, he could probably help them with his shooting ability. So kind of left it to, all right, Haywood Highsmith, let's be fair too, is injured. Has a knee injury. I believe it's a knee injury. He's going to miss the all of training camp in the first part of the season. The Heat are probably looking at it and saying, all right, he's really a 3-4. They have like 7 guys like that, it feels like, on the roster already. And they want to play Bam at the 4 even more in double big lineups with Khalil Ware. So where are we getting him on the floor? So I think for them it was, all right, this gets us under the luxury tax. We can sign Drew Smith, put him in place on the roster, and now we're kind of done for now. So I get why they made this move.
And this, to be clear about the luxury tax, I don't have a problem if a team is close to drop under for that 100%. To be a goal. I know for a lot of fans will look at teams dropping below the luxury tax, and they'll nobody wants to see an asset walk away and the only savings is just sure. in the owner's wallet, right? Nobody wants to see that. But it's not just about saving a couple of $1 million, because it's a huge swing. Because not only if you're above the luxury tax, then you're paying a tax on that money that's above. You drop below, and not only are you clearing salary off your book, so you say knock off whatever it was in this trade. I think it was $3 or $4 million that you ultimately knock off, maybe even a little bit more. well, I guess it had to be the 5.6 million, but
you bring Smith back now.
But
You're
you bring
3 million,
Smith back,
but
so
with the
that's
tax penalties, yeah, you're probably around 8 million or so total.
right. So, but on top of that, you're going to get a payout from the tax-paying teams.
Yep.
So there's that, you got to factor that in too. So not only are you saving the money that you're saving, but you're also at the end of the year going to get a check from the teams that are paying the luxury tax. So it's a big difference in terms of money. If you are $1 million over, it makes a lot of sense to find a way to get $1 million under, because it's actually more than $2 million worth to your franchise. So it matters a lot there. But that said,
I just want to add a couple things. The Heat were a tax team last year.
Yeah.
We're a tax team for a team that, quite frankly, wasn't probably worth paying the tax for. Some of that was just they didn't have enough opportunity to reset after the Jimmy Butler trade. So where they were a tax team last year, now you're in a position with Miami of, if you're a tax team this year, and I don't know if they were a tax team 2 years ago, I'd have to go look. But now what you're going to do is you can start the process of, let's reset that repeater clause.
Yeah.
Let's get out of it. And that's for a team that, let's face it, I don't think anybody's going to call the Heat cheap. They have spent a lot of money in years past to chase championships. And there was also, I think it was Barry Jackson wrote about Miami, because a lot of people are like, why are they not just selling guys off? And he's like, they will not bottom out. Like they have made it clear they have no interest in like a full scale rebuild. They want to be competitive. They want to try to win. Their goal is to win. Well, look at this cap sheet. They've done a pretty good job of cleaning this up. Maybe not this summer, but by the summer of 2027, this thing's pretty clean. And you may see all of a sudden Miami say, now let's go. Let's go in with 80 to 100 million in cap space. Let's go get a bunch of guys. And they are one of the teams where they've kind of done it before. So I'm not really going to be like, oh, well, that's great cap space. You know, how many games does cap space win each year?
Right.
They may actually pull it off. And if you can pull it off where at least we weren't taxed, we're not in our third, fourth year of the repeater tax and getting drilled with these extra penalties. That's why this is valuable. So yeah, if this is a team that has true championship aspirations and is salary dumping guys to avoid the tax and they're helpful guys, I'm going to rip that up and down because I think that's foolish. Miami's not a title contender this year. So yeah, why not get your stuff in order? Because this may pay off. This may be like, all right, yeah, we lost Haywood Highsmith. That kind of stinks, but it is what it is. But that may pay off big, a couple years down the line.
Do you think this is an admission that from Miami that they're not going for it this year?
I think it's just let's be realistic that we'll be in the mix somewhere between 6 and 11, 12 in the East. And, injuries will have an impact either way. Other teams get hurt. Miami will play better. Other teams don't. Miami may play worse. I mean, this is not a roster that's devoid of talent. There's guys who can play. I actually think getting Norman Powell is going to help them quite a bit. Because they needed more scoring punch, and that's a 20-point per game guy who comes in there. We all beat up on Tyler Hero for his defense, but again, outstanding offensive player. Bam's pretty good. Eric Spoelstra's, for my money, the best coach in the game. So like you're in a spot where he'll have them ready to go, and they'll be one of those teams where it's gonna be, oh, man, we got to deal with the Heat tonight, right? Because you're probably not going to blow them out very often. It's just going to be tight.
It's going to be a fight.
Have to work for wins. Yeah, you're going to get defended. You're going to have to make things happen. What will really make the difference for them is do a couple guys out of the Jaquez, Ware, Jovic, Yakushonis group emerge. If one of those guys emerges, or two, ideally, and I mean, not just, they're a nice player, but like that's a real quality starter or somebody who has a starter level impact off the bench, then you could say, all right, the Heat are in the mix for home court advantage maybe in the East. But I think it's just being realistic about where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And now we've got Haywood Highsmith on the Brooklyn Nets. We'll see when he gets healthy. We'll see what he can do there.
And the good work by the Nets, right?
They needed to use the cap space anyway.
Where are we at? Let's do a quick check on the Nets. They are still 13 million under the salary floor, so Still some more work to be done there. They're still sitting on 20 plus million in cap space for this year because, again, there it is, Williams and Sharp. We know they're re-signing, but those are just agreed to, and they're going to come when they come with those deals. So we'll see what that looks like when eventually those guys sign. But good work by the Nets, and they're going to have to do some stuff here as far as moving some guys along on the roster because they've got too many players rostered, but they'll get there eventually. And I think this is solid work. Pick up an asset. Not a great. I mean, it's a 2032 Miami second. We have no idea what they'll be in 2032. I mean, maybe they're terrible, and that's a really nice high second round pick. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I think all around, I mean, it's funny. I was telling someone this at Summer League. I have way more interest in watching the Nets this year than I have either of the last 2 years, simply because I find it fascinating that they drafted 5 guys in the first round. How is that going to work? What is this team going to look like? I'm sure it's going to be bad. And not very good. It's going to look bad. At least we're going to be learning things.
Yes.
Every game when we watch them versus they've got some nice players, but they're just not very good. And this team is what it is. So I'm all in favor of the way the Nets are kind of moving forward with completing their business.
No, I am too. I think that there's a bright future for the Brooklyn Nets. And I'll tell you what, Keith, this is, picking up Haywood Highsmith, he gets back and healthy. It's not out of the question that they could flip him at the trade deadline and pick up another asset. Could there be a team that's contending that finds themselves short a wing defender that says, hey, we'll toss you a second round pick for Haywood Highsmith's expiring contract and bring him on?
You might even be able to get a top 20 protected first out of it if a team is super desperate. We've seen teams in the past be super desperate for wings who can shoot, because that's the other thing. Highsmith has shown he can shoot. So if a team is like, man, I need a 3D wing forward type, maybe you can, Oklahoma City this and get, where we got a pick coming in and we got a pick on the other side. I don't know that it's going to happen this way, but Terrence Mann could be a similar type situation. With that, he's got more money and more years at more money left on the books than Highsmith. But Highsmith, $5.6 million. That's that. I'll say this a lot. That's a deal almost anybody can acquire.
Exactly.
It's pretty easily acquirable guy at that small of money. The Nets books are kind of funny right now because it's like Porter Jr. makes the max, and then you've got Claxton kind of higher mid range, man at DMLE, and then everybody else is rookie scale amounts or less on the roster. So it's just but that's how it should be when you're trying to do a full scale rebuild. I think. We do have to do our tiers, and we will get that in before you go on vacation. I think this is probably the worst team in the league. Them or Utah, to make your choices. I think Washington just has a little more upside to be good, but we'll get into that when we get there. But yeah, the Nets they're going to be bad, but at least they'll be interesting and bad.
They're going to be bad, but they're going to be bad for a reason. There's method. There's method to the badness. There we go.
Well done.
There we go. Well, we found it. By the way, in case you're wondering when the tank off is going to be, Thursday, December 4th, Utah against Brooklyn. When else do they play?
You got about 3.5 months to get prepped for that one.
There we go. And then Friday, January 30th, they meet again.
And about 5 months for that one.
Yep. So there we go.
Get your tickets bought and purchased.
All right. Let's go here. N'Faly Dante to the Hawks. Keith, this is an interesting where he had a restricted free agent not get his salary matched. What happened here? I think because the Hawks ultimately put the Rockets in a position, or the Rockets were in a position where they actually couldn't match this.
Yeah. So a couple interesting things here, right? We rarely see offer sheets for restricted free agents. This was not Giddey or Thomas or Grimes or Kuminga. This was N'Faly Dante, but okay, right? We'll take it. And, beggars can't be choosers here. We get what we get. But this was interesting because he's coming off a 2-way contract. So from the Rockets side, what this is they if he was to sign that qualifying offer, he would have been back with them on another 2-way contract. From another team's side, in order not to match, you have to make it better than that. So in this case, the Hawks come in and they gave him a 2-year deal at the minimum. So they're using the minimum exception. First year is fully guaranteed. Sounds like the second year is non-guaranteed. So Dante's gonna be there. He's gonna be on the roster. And the Rockets they don't have enough room under the first apron hard cap to match even a minimum deal at just over $2 million. So the Rockets certainly, they've already filled their other two-way spots. They were certainly not in a place where it was, well, let's move another player who we like off the roster to match Dante. Because if they'd wanted to do that, they probably would have just signed him to a two-way contract by now. So they were ready to move on. But good for the Hawks. Like, they needed another big, at least another, let's take a flyer. Let's take a shot in the dark kind of big, because all they really have is Onyeka Okongwu and Kristaps Porzingis at the center spot. They have Mohamed Gay, but he's more of a 4, and he's also inexperienced too. Dante flashed last year. He showed some stuff. Really good finish. Shot over 70% at the G League. Outstanding rebounder. Pretty good rim protector. I mean, this is a guy, to use the old school term, range is measured in inches, not in feet, because he's not like it's a dunk or a layup at the basket, and that's it for him. But hey, one more guy you could kind of bring in, see what it looks like. We say it all the time. It's a minimum. If it doesn't work out, you just move on and move to the next guy. But I like this. One other interesting note, and shout out to, I think that the Twitter handle is GSWCBA, I think is what it is, because I had forgotten he's actually the second two-way player to sign an offer sheet since two-way players have been a thing. Do you remember who the other one was?
To sign an offer sheet?
Yeah. Only 2 restricted two-way players have done offer sheets.
No. Who's the other one?
Tyrone Wallace.
Oh.
Back in the day when he was with the Clippers, signed an offer sheet with the Pelicans. Clippers matched it. Clippers waived him. He got claimed off waivers and then waived again later in the year. But just a little CBA nerd trivia there with that one. So, but yeah, so little interesting kind of maneuvering here with this. Couple things, people got a little confused, and I get it. Stuff can get confusing. Like, thought an offer sheet had to be at least 3 years in length. It only needs to be 2. Or it only needs to be 1 actually in an offer sheet. But it's I think people get it confused with a sign and trade. Right. And often what you see is in lieu of an offer sheet, a team will work out a sign and trade, just so you're not going through the whole match period and foolishness that happens with an offer sheet. So in this case, they get there. And then one last thing for the Hawks, because they did it as a 2-year deal using the minimum, they preserve what's left of their non-taxpayer. And because it's only 2 years, you can see it right here on the screen, he'll be a restricted free agent after this because he'll only have 3 years of service. So let's say he really does pop, and it's like, man, this dude can really play. He's a really good backup center. Well, the Hawks will have his restricted rights at the end of this contract if he makes it that far. So just kind of interesting little CBA quirks that they're a good piece of cap management by Atlanta.
Yeah. I mean, most teams are very reluctant to give out offers to restricted free agents, as we're seeing happen right now with the Fantastic Four of Quentin Grimes and all of them, the Josh Giddey and Jonathan Kumingas of the world, but and Cam Thomas, we shouldn't forget about him. But in this situation, Atlanta knew, like, hey, Houston's not going to match. They would have to do some gymnastics. They'd have to make some moves in order to suddenly match this. They're not going to do it. So let's go ahead and submit an offer here. So,
and unlike Brooklyn, let's say Brooklyn was like, you know what, let's throw an offer sheet at Jonathan Kuminga and just force the Warriors to do something. Well, that ties Brooklyn up. And let's say while their cap space is tied up, they get the next Haywood Highsmith deal. Is like, it seems like, hey, we want to sign this other guy. We got to get under the tax. Well, they can't, because now they have to wait. Atlanta wasn't doing anything else. It's a minimum exception anyway. This tied up nothing for them. The reality is, if you tried, because I've seen people be like, well, why didn't Atlanta do this with, one of the really good restricted free agents? Well, the reality is, to any one of those teams would have immediately matched a minimum offer sheet. And but the real reality is the guy would never sign it because they're not minimum value players. So that's why this was just a very odd circumstance that, maybe this becomes a little of a, I wouldn't mind if this was a little bit of a precedent setter for guys coming off two-way deals, because often players that are on two ways where teams do make them restricted, they're just stuck and they have to go back. I wouldn't mind if this goes the other way. The only other restricted guy I think that was still out there on a two-way, Oscar Tshiebwe, he signed his qualifying offer the other day to return to the Jazz. So he is back to the Jazz. Any international listeners that we have, which I know we have several all around, he was rumored to be a major target for EuroLeague teams. So he's now off the board as well. Tshiebwe will be back with the Jazz on a two-way. He chose that over. Sounds like several offers from teams from EuroLeague teams. So it kind of is what it is. But I think he's not done with making his run at the NBA and wants to try. And you know what? If you're in Utah, not a bad spot. You might see some cycling of that roster happen here this year, and something may pop. Tshiebwe, I think both Dante and Tshiebwe are NBA level guys. Tshiebwe especially, he's a guy who, if he could play enough, which he probably can't because he probably foul out every game, he could lead the league in rebounding. He is an unbelievable rebounder. Go look up his G League rebounding numbers. They're off the charts. The problem is, I think he would foul too much and end up out of the game.
Yeah, that's always a challenge for some of those guys. If you're going to pick up a lot of fouls, then your minutes are going to be lower. But I did want to mention before we move on to our next topic here, this does bleed into the bigger conversation on Jonathan Kuminga, because this situation that the Rockets found themselves in, where they're hard capped at that first apron, this is why the Golden State Warriors are not signing Al Horford right now. Why these other deals aren't getting done, at least in part. It's because the Golden State Warriors don't want to put themselves in a situation where they are hard capped at one of the aprons, and then there is a number that Jonathan Kuminga could be offered by a team like, say, the Brooklyn Nets, that they, in theory, would not be able to match unless they made some other kind of significant move. So now we're seeing what happened here with the Rockets. I'm not saying the Rockets were hell-bent on keeping Dante or anything like that, but the situation with the Rockets is the situation essentially that the Warriors are trying to avoid. And it's why we have Al Horford, D'Anthony Melton, all these guys still sitting out there that we know are going to the Warriors. Everybody's just waiting for some kind of movement.
Yep. Same for Philly too. Philly's sitting on 13 players right now.
Yeah.
They do have 14 because Igor Milicic is there, but he's on a camp deal. But so it's really 13 players on standard contracts. They've done nothing to hard cap themselves, so they could sign a minimum or two. But what they're trying to avoid is they don't want to do anything that does put them anywhere near a hard cap situation, even in Philly. So eventually Philly would have to sign a 14th guy if we get to that point, and we'll see where that goes. But they're just sitting in a spot right now where it's all right, they've got to figure it out eventually, but that eventually hasn't come around for them. So it's just kind of, you gotta, this is all part of the game, right? That we're playing with this, and these teams are not going to put themselves in a spot. So I saw a couple people say, well, couldn't Philly salary dump Andre Drummond to Brooklyn and then have like $6 million to spend on a free agent? One, who's the free agent you really want to spend $6 million on? And then use that much out of your mid-level, and now you're hard capped. And then all of a sudden Brooklyn comes back around and like, thanks for the salary dump with a pick, and now we're going to sign Quentin Grimes to an offer sheet you can't match, and we'll move forward. That's what you got to be careful of. Or any team with the mid-level could be like, well, you can't match that either.
Any team.
Let's go that route, and that's same thing with Kuminga. So the Sixers are they're dealing with it right now.
All right, let's jump over here. Bobby Webster to lead the Raptors front office. They did talk about bringing in an external candidate, but didn't ultimately do that. Instead, sticking with Bobby Webster, not replacing necessarily Masai Ujiri, but Bobby Webster just kind of, there's so many different titles, just the prime or main decision maker for the.
I think he actually is retaining his GM title,
right?
Which is what he had, but instead of hiring somebody over him at this time, he's just going to be in charge of the front office.
Exactly. So he's going to be the guy. Now, when we're looking at this Raptors, and there was a conversation that was had the other day about this coming out of Toronto, that essentially what this is beyond just, we're going to stick with Bobby Webster, we believe in him, but this is also a signal that the plans that Masai Ujiri put in place, there is at least some measure of belief in them and in this team. I think you can look at this roster and be critical of what the ceiling is, given the long-term commitments that are on this team contractually. But clearly within Toronto, there's belief that this group can get them where they want to go, or at least provide enough flexibility once they are on the rise. And I do think they're going to be better this season than they were last year. Maybe that's a low bar to clear, but I do think they're going to surprise some people this year. But this is a team that internally there's belief that they can get the job done and still offer enough flexibility to potentially take the leap to that next level. Because I know that I can look at this roster and say, are they too committed to a group where I don't look at them and say they've got a ceiling of, getting into contention? But apparently they feel like, based on their decision-making here, they feel like the plans they've set in motion are good ones, and they're going to want to wind up seeing this through.
Yeah. And so few thoughts on this is there was a report that some of the other people they had spoken to were critical of the roster. And it sounds like I'm doing some very much reading between the lines on the things that have leaked out, where like it's going to take too long. Like, I'm not signing up to undo this mess because there's not a quick path to undoing it, right? This is not, I have 2 big expiring contracts, or I have a superstar that I can trade for 4 firsts, and now we're on our way to rebuilding. It's like there's going to need to be some work done here. So that's part one of it. I think one of the comments was made was the Brandon Ingram trade was a Hail Mary.
Yeah, it was a desperation trade.
He made it out of desperation. And we'll see. I mean, I can see where they're coming from with that.
Same.
I will also say Bobby Webster's been there for 9 years. So like he was a part of everything that was done with this. And a lot of people will tell you a bigger part than I think people realize, because Masai was he had so many other things he was doing that he was a little bit out of the full day-to-day operations. Like teams would say, if you called the Raptors, you started with Bobby and you worked through with him on what does trade look like? Where can we get to? And then you'd kind of then be like, all right, let's bring it to Masai. That's not uncommon at all in a front office, but it was like the idea that Masai was like in there day to day doing all this stuff and all the trade talks, and teams have, I mean, that's part of how Haywood Highsmith gets traded in the middle of August. Teams are batting around trade ideas all year long. And some of them might be, we kind of like that, but we can't do it until X date or whatever it may be. So I'm with you. I think this is more of we have some belief in what's been done, and we're going to kind of opt for continuity and moving forward with this. And my last thought is, I can look at this team and be like, sure, they can be a playoff team in the East.
Exactly.
Why not?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Could I see them winning a round? Probably not. I don't know if there's enough shooting on this team. We'll see. I mean, Ingram would need to be like a flawless fit with the returning guys. But just their starting group, Pirtle, Barnes, Ingram, Barrett, quickly, that's not bad by any means. I don't necessarily love the way they'll fit together, but it's pretty good. But for them to reach like big time, where it's like, here we go, this team is going to be really major for them, you need Scotty Barnes then has to full on hit
exactly
superstar status, and I just don't know that he's going to. I think Scotty Barnes is going to be all-star level guy year in, year out. I just don't know that he may sneak onto an all-NBA team. We've talked about this, where the new rules are going to mean we're going to get some weird all-NBA guys, especially on like that all-NBA third team. I just don't know that we're ever going to be talking about Scotty Barnes as a top 10 carry a franchise player in the league.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I look and question it. If I was an external candidate coming in, I'd be questioning, how far can I take this team, right? I mean, what is the ceiling for this team? Is it, you said, are they going to get out of the first round? I would say the ceiling is probably second round. Okay, so then what are we doing? Is this the group that we want to move forward with? Are we okay with just, some teams may say that's fine, we'll take the playoff revenue and we're good. And here we go. And you never know, maybe Scotty Barnes takes that leap and we get an opportunity to get to the next level. But the not replacing Masai thing, not bringing in an external candidate, all of that, whether or not external candidates were all that interested, I think there is a measure of belief being shown to this group as it is, and we'll see where it ultimately takes them. But I think Toronto's in an interesting spot because there's a lot about this roster that I don't want to. I feel like the teams are not stuck in treadmill territory as much today as they used to be years ago.
Yeah.
But this is a group that does seem to have a very limited upside to it. And we'll see if that's proven right or proven wrong. But if they do come to that realization, that decision that, hey, this group isn't it, they may have some struggles in terms of truly mixing up this roster because the amount of long-term salary on the books. So there's a lot in on this group and in on these guys working. And if it doesn't, the flexibility may not be there for them moving forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, there's a lot of talent here. Like, let's not get it twisted. Like, there are a lot of guys who can really play on this roster. It's just more about fit. For me, I don't know if they have enough shooting because the best shooter on the roster is probably Grady Dick, and he's buried on the bench now. So what is that going to look like? There are definitely health concerns for a lot of these guys, but there are guys who can play. I also think there's a couple of contracts here that they're kind of borderline on you're probably not getting positive value in a trade for a couple of these, and that's a little bit tough to swallow. But let's see, ultimately what they put together and where it goes.
Well, I mean, like Rich Paul admitted, like Brandon Ingram wasn't getting $40 million a year out there in free agency, and so he was happy that he got traded.
We've seen how free agency's gone, so absolutely not. Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's jump over to the Indiana. That a team, if you're going to point to anybody and say, well, but a team that looks like middle of the pack, you never know. The Indiana Pacers, they had a great season last year, made it to the NBA Finals. Obviously, really unfortunate what happened with Tyrese Halliburton in Game 7 there. That was absolutely brutal. But Rick Carlisle, very rightly gets a contract extension here.
Yeah, and I think this is great for him and for the Pacers. Keeps him there. He's one of the better coaches in the league. We've seen him win a title with a Mavs team that was a heavy underdog to that early LeBron, Wade, Bosch Heat team. And then this past year, the incredible run. And it's going to be forever a what if. What if Halliburton doesn't go down in the early minutes of Game 7? Do the Pacers win, right? Did they win that series and win the NBA title? We'll never know.
And if they do, then Miles Turner's still a Pacer, right?
Turner's probably still there. What else?
Right.
And what happens with the Bucks? The Bucks not waive. I mean, we could split it off to the branch timeline Marvel style here and go down a whole other world. And that might be a late August, maybe late September show before we're getting going. But I mean, I think this is just smart. We don't have any details as far as length or money, just multi-year extension. Kudos to Mark Stein, was all over this. He was who broke this news very early on with his stuff. So I think we're just in a spot where this is, again, continuity, right? Like, let's get our guys, let's keep our guys. I think next, let's see what happens with Aaron Nesmith and Benedict Mathurin and extensions. Those are probably the next order of business for the Pacers. Is it a gap year for them? Sure. But again, even without Halliburton, there's an awful lot of talent on this team. And I think this is probably, again, another playoff team. Now, what happens is you take the next injury to a really good guy, and now it starts to become like, all right, well, how much can you absorb here? But they still have Siakam. I think Siakam's a good contender, maybe an all-NBA season coming out of him. Because he's going to have a bigger role. You're going to see the stats there. Andrew Nembhard, we saw him as a starting point guard and look good. And I think Carlisle's a good enough coach where he'll tweak and adjust the system and change some things and look at different stuff. So I think the Pacers are set up well for right now, and then obviously set up well for a year from now when Halliburton's back and we're moving forward.
All right, last thing we've got here, John Wall retires, and it's also been announced he's going to be joining Amazon Prime for their coverage of the NBA. Keith, maybe not the career that we projected for John Wall when he came into the NBA as a rookie, but still, probably the fastest player I've ever seen play NBA basketball. The man was an absolute blur, and that made him so much fun.
Yeah, you look at the history of Kentucky guards under Calipari, the best ones all had the same thing in common, whether it was Wall or Fox or Maxey. Those guys with the ball in their hands, they don't lose anything. They're just as fast, and just about everybody else slows way down once you give them the ball. I mean, John Wall was incredible. That left-handed finish for dunks that he had just over and over and over again, even though he was a right-handed player, was really good. There were a couple years where he dragged kind of mediocre Wizards teams to pretty good levels, as as far as never quite getting there. His unluckiness was he was in the East when LeBron was, running the East. Like, no one was getting through at that time. So, yeah, I mean, a really good career. I will say this too. I'm not excited he retired, but when I caught him on NBA TV last year, he was excellent. Like, just really good. Now, some of that might have been he was still hoping to play, so still like a player at the time, but he didn't crap on the game, but also really got in and offered, like, here's what they're trying to do here. Here's what you're seeing on these plays.
Right.
And we need more of that. We need more of that than the like screaming about like, he's got to be tougher. He's got to be a better leader. Like, all right, what does that mean? Like, what are you even getting to? Like, not, and this wasn't like the Tim Legler, JJ Redick style, like, let me show you a play and fully, but it's really like, this is what you're looking for here as you're coming down. I mean, he was really, really good. So I'm very excited for him to do more on television. Like, we all win. When it's that way there. But yeah, I've seen some people saying, like, is John Wall a Hall of Famer? Probably not to me. He never won a title, never got to a finals, was never like the absolute best guy on a great team. His peak wasn't very high, but still pretty good. And again, we talked about what ifs with Halliburton in the NBA finals. Like, Wall's career is kind of a what if, because he was still at the peak of his career when all the injuries hit. I mean, and different from Klay Thompson, who went through back-to-back injuries. Klay Thompson was never a guy who was really relying on his athleticism or beating guys off the bounce. John Wall was, and that was, really, once that was gone, like, it was gone. And you could see his last couple times we saw him play, just wasn't the same guy. It was a lot more pull-up jump shots instead of getting all the way downhill. But it's still an outstanding career for him, and I think he's going to be great in the next phase of his basketball career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And looking forward to that. All right, everybody. Give us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you again. Till next time. See ya, and stay safe.